Great. And once again, from my side, thank you very much for joining us. We are here to talk about extended producer responsibility as part of this World Circular Economy Forum 25 Accelerator Session. That is a mouthful. My name is Valérie Boyten. I will be your moderator today. I work for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We are an NGO focused on the circular economy, and we are also a partner of the GAP for EPR, the Global Action Partnership for EPR, which is organizing this event today. To begin with, I think we have some housekeeping rules. Is that right? I think we have a slide on that if we can click through. Great. Just for you all to be aware here at this event, the event will be recorded so that you are aware of that. You can follow the chat for any organizational updates from our side, but if you have a question, we would very much like to encourage you to ask your questions in the Q&A tool. So if you go down to this black banner on your Zoom screen, you will find Q&A. Please post your questions there, and you can feel free to do so during the presentations. We will then come to your questions and ask them after the presentations. A very important notice is that translation is available English to Spanish and also Spanish to English. We have two fantastic interpreters with us today, Roberto and Anna. Thank you very much to both of them for being here. You can again go through the black banner underneath your screen, click on interpretation, and there you can choose the English or the Spanish channel, depending on the language that you would like to listen to. Now, moving on to the agenda, as you can see on the next slide. Today, we have a number of things foreseen for you. We will start with a welcome note by Timon Leopold. He's the Environment and Climate Attaché at the German Embassy in Brazil. We'll then move on to a keynote speech that will be given by Pedro Sao Shimao, the lead of the national partnerships at the Global Plastic Action Partnership at the World Economic Forum. Also a very long job title. So thank you very much to both of them for joining us. After that, we'll be moving to a more interactive part with a panel discussion looking at a specific organizational problem, if you want, with EPR, and that is how to define roles and responsibilities. Who gets to be responsible for what in an EPR system? How do we organize the roles of the public sector, the private sector, and importantly, also the informal sector? We'll then move to the Q&A, where we can pick up the questions that you, dear audience, you're very welcome and very much encouraged to ask these questions, again, using the Q&A function. But to kick us off, I'll now hand the word to Timon Leopold to open the session. Timon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Valérie, and thanks everybody for joining. First of all, a very warm welcome from Brasilia on behalf of the German Embassy in Brasilia to this accelerator session organized by the Global Action Partnership for Extended Producer Responsibility as part of the World Circular Economy Forum. I'd like to start with a personal note and a little confession. So first of all, I personally have quite an extensive personal background on circular economy policies in multilateral fora. I also accompanied the development of the German National Circular Economy Strategy that was recently adopted. But, and that is my personal confession, unfortunately, I didn't make it personally to this World Circular Economy Forum in Sao Paulo, even though I'm now based in Brazil due to a lot of events in parallel. But I'm even more delighted to participate in today's event because it gives me the opportunity to reconnect with the topic of circular economy, which has always been close to my heart. So as I mentioned, Germany only last year launched its own circular economy strategy, which is very rich in contents, but there's also an English summary available. I believe there's also a link. Maybe the organizers can share the link to this English summary with interested participants afterwards. And as some of you or many of you will know, last June, Brazil also launched its own national circular economy strategy. The strategy aims to promote the economic transition from the current linear model to a circular economy to create lasting and more conscious economic growth. And only last week, as far as I'm aware, but I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the course of the event, Brazil also adopted the circular economy plan that further lays out the objectives and measures of the Brazilian circular economy policy. So what both strategies, the Brazilian and the German one, have in common, they describe a vision and objectives for the circular economy, but also the way how to get there. And as we all know, the circular economy doesn't come about by itself. This big transition needs the right framework conditions, including, very importantly, the right financial incentives. Now, one instrument that is gaining increasing support is Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR, which holds producers accountable for their product's entire life cycle. It promises to deliver dedicated, ongoing, and sufficient finance to collect, sort, and recycle packaging waste and other products. Not only in Brazil and Germany, but worldwide, governments and other stakeholders are working on solutions to transition from a linear to a circular economy. Implementing or improving EPR systems is often part of their strategies. Your appearance in today's event, virtually of course, dear participants, shows your strong EPR commitment. It underlines that this is the right time to foster the exchange and action on EPR. Today's accelerator session will explore the unique challenges faced by Latin American and Caribbean countries in adopting and implementing EPR systems and how they can be overcome. The session provides insights into key strategies applied by stakeholders from selected countries, including Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Argentina. I'm very much pleased to welcome today's honorable speakers who will share their experiences in setting up and improving EPR systems in different contexts. Those are Pedro Saint-Simon from the World Economic Forum, Angelina Schreiner from the Prevent Waste Alliance, Mariana Nascimento from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in Brazil, Germán Ruiz Méndez, Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources in Mexico, Soledad Meyer, International Alliance of Waste Pickers and also founding member of the National Movement of Recyclers of Chile, and Sergio Bon from Siempre, Argentina. I'm very much looking forward to the following discussion on EPR. As I mentioned, it's a topic that's been part of my life and my professional career for quite some time, and we're all keen to learn from your experiences. Thank you. Back to you, Valerie.
Thank you very much, Timon, for this excellent scene setter. And with that, I will now move on to our keynote speaker, and we'll actually move to the specifics of EPR. What is EPR and what is its state of implementation across the LAC region? Pedro, are you here with us? The floor is yours.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Valerie. And I'm sorry for the big title. Thank you once again on behalf of the Global Plastic Action Partnership for this invitation and to have the opportunity to speak today. I'm actually in São Paulo, currently at the WCEF 2025. And one thing that I can start saying is that EPR was mentioned maybe in all sessions that I attend during these couple of days in Brazil, in some
I'm not sure it's me, but we seem to have lost Pedro. Is it me? Pedro, can you hear us? There may be a connection issue. Let's maybe give him a minute. Yes, are you back?
Yes, Valerie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Confirmed.
Let me check if I can activate my camera. I'm sorry because I'm using my mobile for data. Okay.
We can hear you. We can see you perfectly. Don't worry.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And I'm sorry. So I was saying, I don't know if you listened to anything that I said, but I'm actually in São Paulo. So I was mentioning that in the last couple of days in all World Circular Economy Forum, in all the sessions that I attend, EPR was one of the main topics. So again, this specific session is of extreme value and the work that the Global Action Partnership for EPR is doing. It's again very, very timely, especially for the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. Before I jump to the EPR topic, so let me just explain to you what is the Global Plastic Action Partnership. So we are hosted at the World Economic Forum, and we are a multi-stakeholder platform dedicated to really translate commitments and again, all these action plans into actual action for tackling plastic pollution. So we are focused on the sustainability challenge of plastic pollution. And the way we try to address and support countries in addressing the sustainability challenge is first by creating initiatives that are locally owned. So every national partnership is led by the national actors, and we really just support this convening by bringing together governments, businesses, academia, and civil society. We focus also on these conversations to be evidence-based. So we provide methodologies so that the countries can understand better where they are today, but potentially more important, where they can be in the future. And then a third pillar, focus on inclusivity, because we take the plastic sustainability challenge as an opportunity to improve people's lives. So our initiative since its inception in 2018 always had a people-centric approach. So to translate these pillars into reality, what we do is establishing, again, collaborations with the countries, first with the government, and then with the whole value chain to deliver, again, the next steps for improving circularity in the plastics value chain, and again, doing it in a faster pace. We have currently 25 partnerships across the globe, and 9 of them are here in Latin America, where, again, the region is showing a lot of leadership in really translating, again, these action roadmaps, these circular economy strategies into, again, action on the ground and change on the ground. And just to give you an example of some countries where we are working right now. So for instance, in Costa Rica, we brought together the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Health, and together with the whole value chain, they are about to release their action roadmap for tackling plastic pollution. That will happen in a couple of weeks. And again, it's right before the UN Ocean Conference. So really building on the momentum of this event. The same happening in Dominican Republic on the 5th of June. Again, in this case, it's the Ministry of Industry that is leading the way and really looking at the plastic pollution challenge as an opportunity to really make the value chain of Dominican Republic more competitive. And again, by being a front runner in this space, and more specifically on EPR. So in our partnership in Ecuador, we are leading a working group on EPR for packaging. Again, Ecuador already has EPR for other types of products, but we are really using the different perspectives from the value chain to support the foundations of this EPR policy. And as we are starting in Paraguay, that's already also a topic of high interest across the whole value chain, and we are supporting both governments and private sector to come together and move forward with EPR policy for packaging, plastic packaging in particular. And again, these examples are just two, and the region again it's in a moment where a lot of countries are taking very bold steps in terms of EPR. And again, I know that I have limited time, so I decided to focus on 4 countries. I don't make justice to what the whole region is doing, but just to give concrete examples. And for instance, Chile stands out as a regional leader with one of the most advanced EPR policies. They enacted a law in 2016 that mandates EPR for 6 priority product categories, including packaging. And in 2021, they also released the decree to set differentiated collection targets by material, including plastics, which became enforceable in late 2023. So for plastics, for instance, producers must meet progressive targets that start from 3% and can go up to 12%. And again, further decrees in Chile are expected. And I just came out of a conference where Chile was explaining, again, the opportunity, but also the challenges that they are facing in the enforcement of this EPR policy. The same goes for Colombia, that again, especially this year, is taking very bold steps in implementing EPR in the country. Again, a path that started with some resolutions enacted between 2018 and 2020 on packaging waste, requiring producers to meet mandatory collection and recovery targets again through by 2030, sorry. And the country commitment went a little bit further with the law of 2022 on single-use plastics that again is now being enforced. And what is interesting, and just to also give you a glimpse of the conversations that we had here, is that the private sector for Colombia, knowing that the targets are for 2030, it's already asking, again, GPAP and other partners in the country to support the conversations between private sector and public sector to really think on the targets for 2040. So again, it's interesting to see that the momentum, both from public and private sector, does not stop in 2030. They are already looking for 2040. Again, other examples on Mexico, that is, again, also moving forward with EPR, where it's applied via mandatory management plans for specially handling wastes, including large-scale plastic packaging, and it's a decentralized system. In 2022, they enacted a national circular economy strategy that acknowledged the need to strengthen the EPR systems in the country, and now they are working on that. And finally, Brazil, that has a long experience of implementing EPR since 2009, 2010, and in a very interesting way. And again, and this is also seen in Colombia and Chile, the way that it integrated since the beginning the informal waste sector and waste pickers cooperatives to really ensure that the EPR schemes do not present themselves as a challenge to these workers, but really as an opportunity to improve their lives. So again, align also with the vision that we have for a circular economy for plastics. But again, despite this momentum, there are a few challenges that persist. So across the region, we continue to see inconsistencies in definitions, enforcement mechanisms, data systems. We heard yesterday Brazil saying that they were reporting very low levels of recycling for a few years, and suddenly those levels start to jump to so from 2 to 4%, suddenly to 12%. And it's not a question of a sudden increase in recycling. It was the quality and availability of data. So again, this is very important and continues to be a challenge across the region. And also something that we see by working with these 9 countries and also at the regional level. So the private sector sees a lot of challenges from transition from one market to the other. So again, all countries are doing their own EPR systems, but there is a need for further coordination to, again, make life easier for those who need packaging, again, in business. So that's why under the Plastics Working Group of the Circular Economy Coalition for Latin America and the Caribbean, that we are coordinating, and that is led by the Ministry of Environment of Chile and the Colombia's National Business Association, ANDI. We are leading Latin America regional comparative study on extended producer responsibility. And this is being carried out by the University of Buenos Aires. And again, the study is still in the makings. It's expected to be released late this year, but I can already give you a sneak peek on the initial findings that we got from the study of the University of Buenos Aires, that has been using this group of more than 60 participants to really collect insights from countries, from businesses, from NGOs, and really understand where we can improve regional coordination to, again, surpass some of the challenges that I mentioned and reinforce the momentum that many countries of the region are already building on EPR. So one is fragmented. One of the findings is that there are fragmented legal frameworks. So few countries have adopted overarching EPR legislation. So again, the laws are spread across different ministries also. So that's another finding. So institutional fragmentation, and then because they are spread across different ministries, it's difficult to understand really who should own the implementation of EPR, and that creates challenges for the government, but also for the private sector to comply with that. Then another finding is unclear incentives and enforcement. So there is no common vision on how to design incentives and penalties that are fair, effective, and innovation friendly. So that's one of the early findings. And then again, the role of consumers. Again, how the EPR systems can really have the consumer at the center and use behavioral change as a way to really enforce those EPRs in a more effective way. And then the final finding is the private sector alignment. And this is also quite interesting to see that businesses are very keen to have EPR systems in place, and they are very keen to see countries across the region coordinating with each other. And by coordinating, I don't mean harmonizing EPRs, because every context in Latin American countries is different, but at least that there is some coordination, for instance, on definitions, on ways to collect data, on certain rules that gives, again, certainty for the businesses to operate across the region. So these findings make it clear, and again, and the examples that I gave too. So progress is real in the region, is gaining a lot of momentum, but unlocking regional impact will require, again, coordination in definitions, coordination in data, in enforcement, and in the participation of the different stakeholders that are part of the value chain. And this is exactly the type of collaboration that we, as the Global Plastic Action Partnership, want to foster even more in the region. So again, closing, I think GPAP, the Global Plastic Action Partnership, keeps its commitment to work with countries at the individual level, but also at the regional level, in supporting their efforts to build strong and effective extended producer responsibilities that can, again, really make the most use of resources, and that we transform waste into resources back to the economy, and that this can be used as an economic competitive advantage for the different countries of the region. And again, we believe in the power of collaboration, and that's why we are very pleased with the invitation today from the Global Partnership for Action on EPR. And again, we are very keen to continue building this collaboration also with the Prevent Waste Alliance and its partners, to really, again, support the efforts from all sides, governments, private sector, civil society organizations from Latin America, again, to build a strong people-centric circular economy that, again, can really be the competitive advantage from the region, both in economic terms, but also social, and of course, the ultimate goal of keeping, again, waste out of the environment and transform this waste into valuable resources in the economy. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry for the initial problems with my sound and camera. And again, looking forward to the rich dialogue that comes next. Over to you, Valerie.
No worries at all, Pedro. This was excellent. Thank you so much. One of the things you said when you were going through the lessons learned or the outcomes from the study from the Buenos Aires University, you asked this question of who owns implementation, who does what? And that's actually an excellent bridge to our next speaker, which is my partner in crime, I should say, in the Gap for EPR, Angelina Schranger, who is here with us. Just to maybe help answer that question you just raised, Pedro, on who owns implementation, who does what in EPR, what are the roles and responsibilities. And after Angelina's intervention, we'll then move to our panel discussion. Angelina.
Yeah, thanks so much, Valerie. I'll give my best to answer this question, and I'm honored to introduce into today's topic. But before doing so, I'd like to give a brief overview of the GAP for EPR that is hosting this accelerator session today. As you can see on the slide, it's a partnership between UNEP, WWF, OECD, GIZ, with circular economy support by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and hosted by Prevent Waste Alliance. And yeah, we kicked off 1.5 years ago, and the idea is really to bring together stakeholders, experts, practitioners on the topic of EPR to share knowledge, to offer a platform to learn from each other and to connect. How do we do that? We offer a library. We also strive for a common understanding of EPR, as Pedro just said. In the library, you find many documents rich of content and best practices on EPR, including also an EPR toolbox and a policy paper available both in English and in Spanish. We also offer a help desk where we provide coordinated and tailored technical support. So also if you have a question you would like to discuss with peers or experts, please reach out to us and we're happy to find a solution to support you. Later on, we will also have Sergio Bon on our panel. He's from Sempre Argentina that was supported through our help desk last year. And then also we offer a community as third pillar where we bring together an international EPR community as we're doing today. Thanks for joining this event. So on the next slides, just a few words on potential setups of EPR systems, because they also influence the roles and responsibilities within the system, of course. And we want to acknowledge that, of course, the setup of an EPR system varies from country to country. So everything that I will say now is theory, and we know that in practice, often things are different. But starting off with the point, mandatory versus voluntary schemes, of course, that's a question to be considered in the beginning. Experience shows that mandatory EPR schemes perform better regarding monitoring, enforcement, also free riding prevention, and also mandatory EPR schemes often cover a broader scope of waste or materials. So that's definitely an advantage compared to voluntary schemes. Also, there's a differentiation between financial EPR schemes where producers fund but actually do not operate the system. So in most cases, the public sector, the municipalities operate a collection system of covered products and then recoups the cost from the producers, versus operational schemes where producers fund and producers or their proxies also operate the system. And then one can distinguish also between individual responsibility, where each producer is organizing their own system, and then collective responsibility, where producers are fulfilling their responsibility in a collective way by performing producer responsibility organizations. Okay, so much on the differences in the system design. Now let's dive into the roles and responsibilities of some key stakeholder groups. So starting off with governments, of course, as mentioned, mandatory EPR schemes tend to be more effective. So governments can make EPR policy that clearly defines the producer, their obligations, targets, etc. And governments can, and also other public authorities are then, of course, also responsible for the law enforcement and the monitoring of the system. Now, a question that is discussed quite heavily, who are the obliged companies that need to pay into the system? So according to many existing EPR schemes around the world, all companies that introduce packaged goods to the market by either selling packaged imported products or locally produced products to retailers can be defined as obliged companies. So in a nutshell, all local producers and importers. And of course, they're responsible for ensuring that their packaging waste is properly collected, sorted, and recycled. And yeah, like mentioned before, they may assume this responsibility directly themselves or can also pay a third party to do so. And then thinking, of course, also upstream, we also want to avoid packaging. Producers and importers can also influence the packaging design and demand that a minimum proportion of recycled material is used in the packaging they purchase. And also they can demand the packaging to be reusable and easily recyclable. Then PROs, I mentioned before, of course, they're fulfilling the obligations of the obliged companies in a collective EPR system. This means organizing the collection, but also the reporting, meeting targets, etc. So in general, just responsible for operating the system, which makes them, of course, a key stakeholder. Also, distributors, retailers of packaged goods like supermarkets can be obliged to take back waste and to ensure its proper handling. This is not the case in every EPR system, but it could be an option. And they should also ensure that their suppliers are participating in the EPR system. Making it even more complicated on the next slide, of course, there are more stakeholders to be considered. Please bear with me. Consumers, and Pedro also touched upon this topic. Yeah, of course, consumers should be encouraged to buy as many unpackaged goods and products as possible, and to buy products in reusable packaging to reduce the amount of packaging waste. And also consumers should dispose of packaging waste in the correct collection containers. So ideally by separating the waste at source if the system allows. So of course there needs to be some awareness raising towards consumers. Also waste management operators in some countries, also waste banks play a big role by collecting, sorting and recycling packaging waste. And also, of course, including the informal sector in a fair and just way. And the service is then, of course, covered by the funds of the EPR system. Municipalities, I mentioned that they provide a linkage between consumers and waste management operators. And in a financial EPR scheme, they are also responsible for organizing the collection and carrying out the duties. Last but not least, again, thinking upstream, raw material suppliers, manufacturers, converters of packaging materials, they should enable reuse, ensure recyclability of materials. Also, secondary raw material should be used whenever possible. So on the next slide, you can see a diagram with an example of a collective EPR system. Yeah, thank you. Here, yeah, the PRO, again, the central player, receiving the funds of the producers and importers and forwarding them to the waste management operators, but also communicating with the consumers. And this is all in the framework. You see the dotted line, which is the government providing the framework, the regulations, and enforcing the system. So much of theory. Now I'm really excited to hear our panelists speak about the practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina. And indeed, moving from theory to practice, that was the subtitle for this event. So that's what we will do. I would like to invite our 4 panelists to switch on their cameras, please. And I'll introduce them in a bit. Just a reminder to you in the audience, please, if you have a question that comes to mind, a question for one of the panelists, put your question in the Q&A here on the Zoom, because after the panel, we will move to Q&A and we will basically ask your questions to these 4 panelists. Also, a reminder that we have interpretation available today, so you can click on the interpretation button in your Zoom, and then you can, depending on your wishes, listen in English or in Spanish today. So looking to see if our wonderful panelists, yes, I can see them all online. I can see them with their cameras on. Fantastic. Welcome to you all. First, we have Mr. Germán Ruiz Mendez. He's a Director of Sustainable Urban Environmental Development at the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources in Mexico. Thank you very much for being here. We also have Mariana Nascimento, she's an environmental analyst at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in Brazil. We have Sergio Bon, who is a circular economy consultant at SEMPRE in Argentina. SEMPRE is an association dedicated to building improved waste management and recycling systems in Argentina. And last but not least, we have Soledad Meya here, who is the founding member of the National Movement of Recyclers of Chile, but also active globally in the recyclers and waste pickers movement. We will begin with Germán, actually, who will give us a bit of an update, and also Pedro was hinting at this previously, an update on a draft EPR law being developed in Mexico. Germán will be using slides, we'll be giving more of a presentation. Then we'll be moving to our other three panelists for further questions and more of an interview style. I should say that we are doing the panel in English, with the exception of Soledad, who will be speaking in Spanish. But again, you have translation available if needed. Germán, the floor is yours. Very welcome to the session.
Thank you, Valerie, and good afternoon, good evening for everyone. Greetings from Sao Paulo. We are in the global event about circular economy. And thank you to Global Action Partnership for inviting us for talking about these important issues about the EPR. So if you don't have problem, I'm going to speak in Spanish. You can use the translation, but the slides are in English, so let's come together, okay? Bueno, muy buenas tardes, buenos días a todas y todos. Si me permiten, vamos a hablar de este tema en particular. México está transitando hacia la economía circular. Es un momento muy importante porque tenemos una prioridad presidencial. Si pasamos a la next slide, please. Vamos a considerar justamente los elementos que tiene nuestra Ley General de Economía Circular, que está en un momento de discusión. Actualmente la presidenta Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo ha establecido la economía circular como una prioridad en su plan de gobierno. Para eso se ha establecido como un proyecto de infraestructura emblemático para la Secretaría de Medio Ambiente y Recursos Naturales, encabezada por la maestra Alicia Bárcena. Nos ha encomendado justamente trabajar en este proyecto que tiene que ver con un parque de economía circular. Será el primer parque de economía circular en México, que tendrá procesos innovadores, que tendrá procesos de vinculación con el medio ambiente y también vinculación con la circularidad. Pero para eso también tenemos que trabajar en el marco regulatorio, en el marco legal de todos los componentes que están vinculados con este gran proyecto. Next slide, please. Si podemos vincularnos desde el punto de vista organizativo, tenemos 4 elementos que están vinculados con la ley. El primero es el Parque de Economía Circular. El segundo tiene que ver con 10 plantas. Y el tercero está vinculado también con aspectos relacionados justamente con el medio ambiente. Next, please. Okay, thank you. So, estos son los gobiernos subnacionales que tienen actualmente leyes de economía circular. Hay que comentar que justamente en nuestra actual legislación nosotros tenemos la responsabilidad compartida. Las leyes justamente locales buscan tener la responsabilidad extendida. Entonces, actualmente tenemos 9 leyes estatales, locales, donde ya se ha considerado la responsabilidad o donde se está considerando la economía circular como un componente prioritario. Dentro de esas 9 leyes hay algunas que están vinculadas con residuos y hay leyes muy particulares. Next, please. Parte de lo que se está trabajando en este proceso es justamente la discusión con los sectores empresariales para establecer la responsabilidad extendida. Desde el punto de vista, esta nueva ley nacional o ley general de economía circular tiene como objetivo principal reducir sobre todo la contaminación y atender justamente el punto de vista de la reducción de los recursos naturales y de la disminución. Desde este punto de vista se van a aplicar en distintos niveles de gobierno México tiene 32 entidades federativas, 32 gobiernos subnacionales y más de 2.400 municipios. Entonces, hay que establecer una coordinación a nivel nacional desde el punto de vista de la Rectoría Federal, donde podamos ya conversar, donde podamos establecer la responsabilidad extendida, la responsabilidad compartida y sobre todo el consumo responsable y la producción responsable. Esto tiene que ver con todo lo que estamos discutiendo acá en Brasil, que desde el punto de vista de la cooperación internacional nos han estado también apoyando muchísimo para guiarnos justamente no solamente en la guía y asesoría técnica, sino también en las recomendaciones hacia la implementación. Y estamos hablando evidentemente de prevenir y minimizar y todos los principios que están vinculados con la economía circular. Pasamos a la siguiente, por favor. Next, please. Thank you. Bueno, esto es parte de lo que se está considerando en la actual Ley General de Economía Circular, que ya se está trabajando también con los sectores productivos, con los sectores empresariales. Se está considerando un programa nacional, una política nacional de economía circular. Se está estableciendo también las negociaciones para generar una plataforma nacional de economía circular que tenga que ver con la coordinación de otras dependencias. Nosotros somos medio ambiente, nos coordinaremos con la Secretaría de Economía, con la Secretaría de Infraestructura y Comunicaciones, con la Secretaría de Energía, es decir, va a haber un grupo de ministerios que van a trabajar justamente en esta conformación e integración de las principales prioridades que están establecidas, no solamente en la prioridad del Parque de Economía Circular, sino que trabajará ya con una perspectiva nacional. Se va a establecer también, o se va a buscar establecer un sistema nacional de economía, de información de economía circular con la información que genera nuestro Sistema Nacional Estadístico. También se van a actualizar algunas normas oficiales mexicanas, que son documentos más específicos que tenga que ver con la circularidad, y también tendremos algunos indicadores que esto nos permitirá justamente avanzar en todo lo que hemos estado viviendo a nivel internacional en la transición hacia la economía circular. Y parte también, como sabemos que es una responsabilidad extendida, tendrán que establecerse facilidades o beneficios económicos para las empresas que trabajen la responsabilidad extendida, desde el punto de vista de facilidades financieras, mecanismos financieros, a partir de impuestos, de la exención de impuestos y de algo que está haciendo actualmente el gobierno de México, que es establecer polos de desarrollo económico y del bienestar. Estos polos están ubicando áreas estratégicas, sectores estratégicos en determinados puntos geográficos del país. Eso se está publicando justamente en los próximos meses y forman parte del Plan México. México está trabajando intensamente en el fortalecimiento del sector productivo, pero también de la vinculación internacional y de las inversiones extranjeras. Entonces, este es un punto prioritario para también la economía circular, que forman parte dentro de estos polígonos estratégicos que les llamaban, prácticamente zonas económicas especiales, que es un concepto que más pueden ustedes familiarizar, pero es justamente vinculando estos polos hacia la circularidad, donde evidentemente se establecerán estos elementos para que la responsabilidad extendida pueda establecerse. Pasamos a la siguiente, por favor. Next, please. Y esto es parte de lo que se está ya discutiendo en esta Ley General de Economía Circular, que tiene que ver con una obligación legal. Se está estableciendo también organismos coordinadores que permitan generar la coordinación de las distintas cadenas de valor que participan dentro de la circularidad o dentro de las cadenas de reciclaje que ya están establecidos. Hay otros elementos que tienen que ver con la reciclabilidad, con la circularidad y con el tratamiento por sectores. México también tiene un gran reto, sobre todo, que enfrentar con el tema de los residuos sólidos urbanos. Actualmente México produce 120,000 toneladas al día, entonces eso implica justamente un gran reto para que estos residuos se manejen de manera adecuada, además de los residuos de manejo especial que también son grandes retos para nuestro país. Y también lo que se está buscando es un sistema de monitoreo y un sistema también de vinculación a partir de cierta trazabilidad para poder fortalecer la responsabilidad extendida. Next, please. Siguiente, por favor. Thank you. Y bueno, esto sería parte de lo que se está trabajando justamente a nivel nacional, a nivel mundial, es promover justamente el crecimiento de la responsabilidad extendida, pero también aplicarlo en distintos niveles de gobierno, que el sector público, como comentaban también Pedro, las alianzas públicas y privadas se puedan establecer como un elemento fundamental. Parte de la responsabilidad extendida será justamente vincular a estas empresas a partir de ciertos instrumentos que faciliten la certificación, que faciliten la identificación de productos en la circularidad y también, sobre todo, pues un tema pendiente tiene que ver con la incorporación de los valores, obviamente, en el ecodiseño. Ese es uno de los componentes fundamentales también para minimizar y para prevenir justamente la producción o la sobreexplotación de recursos naturales. Lo que se busca finalmente es que tengamos esta famosa simbiosis industrial donde podamos establecer estos valores y estas cadenas de valor a partir de la reciclabilidad, y ahora hablaremos justamente de la circularidad. Pasamos a la siguiente, next please. Y bueno, para terminar un poco y establecer esta conversación con mis demás colegas, pues es muy importante para México trabajar de lo lineal a lo circular. Tenemos que romper los paradigmas a nivel nacional y a nivel mundial. Es el momento de trabajar en la economía circular y cambiar en el paradigma. Estas sesiones acá en Brasil han sido muy importantes para todos los sectores. Es el momento, es justo ahora cuando tenemos que trabajar en esta importante tarea de cuidar el medio ambiente y de trabajar de manera muy vinculada con los sectores productivos. Esta ley que se va a promover a nivel nacional invita justamente a reflexionar en la forma en la que producimos, consumimos y en la forma que podemos coexistir. Tenemos que seguir creciendo como sociedad, pero debemos de dejar de detener el deterioro al medio ambiente y sobre todo también trabajar con temas de mitigación y cambio climático. Por eso, desde el punto de vista de la vinculación con la economía circular y con las propias identificaciones de las políticas climáticas, trabajaremos justamente con esa lógica compartida. Es el momento, es ahora, la responsabilidad es compartida y creemos que juntos, no solamente como país, como nuestros sectores productivos, sino de la mano con toda la cooperación internacional y con toda la experiencia que se está generando, podemos hacer algo por el medio ambiente. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. That's I have finished.
Thank you so much, Herman, and I really admire your ability to speak one language and have your slides in a different language without hesitation. So extremely well done. And yeah, it was just a very good overview of where you are, the work that you've done in the past and how far you've come really in Mexico. I would now like to turn to my other three panelists for whom we have questions. Mariana, first of all, from Brazil. Welcome to this event. Now turning from Mexico to Brazil, you have a different tradition. It's not so much EPR, but it's more around reverse logistics. Can you explain us how that works and how it's actually different from EPR? Mariana, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the globe. I'd like to thank the Global Action Partnership for EPR for the invitation and congratulate on the panel and greet my fellow panelists. And well, thank you for the question. And I would like to start by saying that there are some difference among EPR and what is implemented in Brazil that we call reverse logistics. But all in all, the goals and the ideas are pretty much the same. That is to increase the recycling rates, is to increase the recycling contents by reinserting products and goods in this production cycle, but with the through the inclusion of those who put the products in the market in the first place. So that being said, I wouldn't say, because as Angelina showed in her first words, there are many types of EPR, and I would say reverse logistics would be just one type with a different name. But here in Brazil, the concept of shared responsibility underpins the idea of EPR. So besides the manufacturers and importers, we also include distributors and traders in the equation. And it's mainly because in our reality, the size of the country is too big that we found it necessary to bring more actors to the table. And even though these two actors have different roles, for implementation, they do have roles. So, for example, traders are responsible for instance, for the installation and maintenance of what we call voluntary delivery points. I think it's called bring banks in other countries. And traders also have to be included when they have their own products. So when they are brand owners, like big supermarkets, for example, they not only sell products, they have their own brand. So when they are brand owners, we are trying to equalize them to producers and manufacturers. It is not regulated yet, but it's coming soon. And the second difference I would say is tax, because we don't have a national regulatory agency for waste management specifically. So in that agency would be in charge of defining the value of the tax, of receiving the income and defining the investments, for example. It's for the modulating of the taxes. By constitution, our constitution, the waste management is an obligation, it's due for municipalities. So as a federal government, we cannot determine and define taxes nationwide. We do have some municipalities and some pools of cities that they tax waste management separately because they have their own regulation agencies. And talking about municipality, I would say that could be the third difference. As I said, they are responsible for municipal solid waste. So for implementing the EPR schemes or systems, not always, but there are many different arrangements that can be done. But for example, the city hall can, because we have the incentive to include waste pickers. It's very important in our context of Brazil. So for example, city halls can provide the land for the sorting shed, and companies can structure the shed and plus pay for the material. Or companies can deal and negotiate with waste picker cooperative directly. The arrangements are many arrangements possible. But I have to mention it's mandatory EPR in Brazil for 13 chains of products. And companies can operate the system as an individual model or collectively. And in this case, if it's a collective model that the company choose to be in with other companies, they made it through what we call managing entities, which are the extended producer organization, the PROs that you mentioned before. They pay according to the proportion of what they put in the market, but the arrangements are made between them. We don't say you have to pay that, you have to pay for this operation, but we only said it's mandatory. They can do individually, collectively, and they have to present the results annually for the government. I think I would stay here, and I'm open for questions.
Well, we have more questions for you, so please stay with us, Mariana. But thank you very much. A perfect first introduction as to what is mandatory, what not, and how does it work, and so on. Moving to Sergio then, and to the Argentinian perspective. Sergio, in your role and in SEMPRE, you have maybe a bit more of a horizontal overview or a bit of a helicopter overview over all the different actors. Can you share your perspectives as to the role that businesses play versus the role that governments play and so forth, and how does this all connect to each other?
Well, hello to everyone. I'm very pleased to be invited to this dialogue, which is very important, GAP for EPR. The context is, particularly in Argentina, that during the last 25 years, a number of draft proposals for an EPR regulation have been sent to Congress, to National Congress, and that has been unsuccessful. There are many reasons for that, different studies, but it's mostly the lack of political consensus and also the lack of trust between the different stakeholders, being the producers, the industry, government, and the collective of waste pickers cooperatives. In the meantime, during the last 10 years, the organization that I work for, a number of individual efforts have been implemented by producers, implementing their own programs individually that involve incentives, financial incentives, and also some operation work with technical support for the value chain. That would mean supporting logistics expenses or investment in equipment, in sorting plants, cooperatives, but also the recycling industry. Like to clarify, the only EPR regulation and system in place in Argentina is for agrochemical containers, and that's has been for a number of years and is progressing. But for packaging waste, that's what's happening from the regulation side in the last few years. In that context, SEMPRE, together with ARS, which is the Solid Waste Association, and the National Packaging Institute, decided to get together to form a voluntary PRO, Producer Responsibility Organization. And we've been lucky to get the support from GAP for EPR during 2024, which supports this initiative in terms of implementing the principles of EPR, the design of a PRO, and the governance and so on. A consultancy team has been in Buenos Aires a number of occasions, and we have progressed a lot in that context. So considering there is no regulation, we see as a step forward a voluntary PRO, which is not ideal, as Angelina shared in the slides, that a mandatory system is what is needed. But our focus is to move from individual efforts into a collective effort of the different programs and implementing systems and evidence that recycling is achieved, and a better use of the incentives that companies are using today to improve the function of the value chain. We are currently in a perfect storm, and that's how affects any plans in a particular country. Nowadays, we're going through a deregulation phase in the country that allows a lot of post-consumer material being imported that was banned before. There is a crisis in the economic side, so consumption has fallen, and there is less packaging waste. There is an energy tariffs increase. So it's a perfect storm that is affecting the collective of waste pickers cooperatives, but also the recycling industry. Now, when we talk about recycling industry in this part of the world, it's not like state of the art that you see in Western Europe. So it's the recycling industry for plastic, paper, or metals is more in terms of the standards of health and safety and social benefits, it's comparative to the a collective of waste pickers cooperative. So there is a need to prop up that standards, and that's where the business sector is concerned and focused at this moment in maintaining the wheel moving by supporting the value chain. But at the end of the day, what we believe is collaboration is needed, and EPR regulation is urgently needed at national level, but at provincial, at municipality levels, it's important to continue the collaboration and articulation to focus on the incentives where precisely are needed. For example, logistics is an important thing in countries like Argentina, many other countries in South America, where the distances from consumption centers to the recycling industry can be at least 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers. And that makes it prohibitive for many populations to make the recycling materials recycled. So that's where we need to work on focusing incentives where they're mostly needed.
Thank you, Sergio. Interesting how you describe this as a perfect storm, and maybe raising the sense of urgency also as to what EPR can do and can meaningfully do, and therefore the attention that needs to be paid to designing that EPR from the beginning and getting everyone involved. We'll talk more about that in a second. I would love to check if Soledad is here with us and if you can hear us. Hello, Soledad. Yes, perfect. Great to have you online with us. Fantastic. Just to introduce yourself, introduce you to the audience, very welcome here as a founding member of the National Movement of Recyclers of Chile. You started out yourself as an informal waste worker. You then went on to found, establish, and also contribute to several international informal waste worker movements active around the globe. Based on all this very elaborate experience that you have, what do you consider to be a success story for informal worker integration in EPR? The floor is yours.
Hola, buenas tardes o buenos días, no sé. En este minuto en mi país ya es buenas tardes. Quiero contarles un poco cómo funciona para nosotros o cómo hemos visto funcionar de alguna forma u otra la RP a nivel latinoamericano y en el Caribe. Cuáles son nuestras mayores preocupaciones y cuáles son las amenazas que hoy día creemos es importante analizar. Frente a los expositores anteriores, quiero contar que nosotros tenemos una red latinoamericana y el Caribe de recicladores de base en nuestra región, pero también pertenecemos a la Alianza Internacional de Recicladores de Base de los 5 continentes del mundo. Una articulación de más de 5 millones de recicladores a nivel global. Eso significa que hoy día existe alrededor de 40 millones de recicladores en el mundo que están tratando de organizarse y articularse frente a estos escenarios tan complejos que van apareciendo. De ser un grupo de hombres y mujeres invisibles dentro de la sociedad, enterrados o instalados en lugares donde nadie quiere estar, que son los vertederos, o en la calle recolectando residuos, pasamos a ser personas protagónicas con un rol muy importante en una situación crítica climática que está afectando a nivel global al mundo. Para eso los instrumentos que hoy día se han instalado a nivel global y sobre todo en nuestros países latinoamericanos tienen también una mirada preocupante cuando no se está pensando cómo hacerlo, cuando realmente no se está viendo cuáles son los actores importantes de este escenario. En primera parte, hoy día tenemos una ley en Chile que tiene como principio básico que el que contamina paga. Entendiendo ese principio básico, la responsabilidad le cabe al mundo privado, a estas grandes empresas productoras de envases y embalajes que instalan en nuestros países y en nuestras ciudades, afectando directamente a la comunidad, a través de la mala gestión de estos residuos que se van generando a nivel nacional. En Chile, la ley RP, logramos instalar a los recicladores dentro de ella como un principio básico de reconocimiento a la labor de hombres y mujeres que nos hemos dedicado por años a recoger, a recolectar, a valorizar este tipo de residuos, transformándolo hoy día como en materia prima para la industria del reciclaje, que es una gran separación. La industria del reciclaje no son los recicladores del mundo. La industria del reciclador es la que transforma el residuo que nosotros recolectamos para hacer esta transformación. La ley REP en Chile tiene esta característica que hemos logrado y que es la única ley en el mundo que incorporó realmente a los recicladores dentro de la gestión. Pero a pesar de eso, no garantiza la participación clara y exacta de ellos dentro de la integración de la gestión de residuos en nuestros países. Por esto, hemos luchado incansablemente para que realmente se reconozca a los recicladores de base dentro de la cadena medioambiental como el primer eslabón en la recolección. Se habló también de un cambio de paradigma. Para hacer un cambio de paradigma en el mundo se requiere también el reconocimiento, la dignificación y la inversión. Cuando se habla de incentivos e inversiones a nivel de la RP, siempre se empieza a pensar en la industria, en las grandes empresas, pero no en estos actores que trabajan como hormiga en la calle recolectando los residuos o dentro de vertederos. La ley REP puede ser un instrumento clave en la construcción y en el reconocimiento y sobre todo en la recolección de residuos, haciendo responsable a aquellos actores que han contaminado nuestro planeta. Pero si esa ley no tiene el cambio de paradigma necesario de inclusión, de reconocimiento e integración de aquellos personajes, lamentablemente va a volver a ser un instrumento privatizador que va a quitarle el derecho a la recolección de residuos a hombres y mujeres que hemos vivido de ello de forma, digamos, indignas, recolectando sin pago alguno, sin reconocimiento, sin seguros sociales, por décadas. En el mundo existen hasta 4 generaciones de recicladores. Por ende, la ley REP puede ser un instrumento que puede venir a cambiar un paradigma, como puede ser un instrumento que puede fortalecer los paradigmas que hoy día ya existen. Estas brechas tremendamente grandes que no reconocen a los actores principales. Por otro lado, es sumamente importante entender el rol de los recicladores. No es que recolectemos 1 kilo o una tonelada. Un reciclador en el día puede recolectar hasta 3 toneladas diarias de residuos. Si hablamos de 40 millones de recicladores en el mundo, estamos hablando de grandes cantidades de toneladas de residuos que no terminan enterradas, quemadas o en alguna orilla de río o en algún océano contaminando nuestro planeta. Nosotros decimos que esta ley puede ser sumamente importante porque de alguna forma u otra dignifica el oficio de los recicladores de base. Pero la ley también viene con muchas aristas. Entre esas aristas, primero que nada, formalización. Cuando se habla de formalización, para nosotros es sumamente importante entender qué es lo que es informal y qué es lo que es formal. ¿Qué es lo que es formal para nosotros los recicladores de base? Es la tarea y el trabajo que hemos hecho silenciosamente, de una forma correcta y dándole un valor agregado a un producto que nadie le dio. Esa bolsa negra, misteriosa, llena de cosas que sacamos de nuestro hogar, nosotros abrimos esa bolsa misteriosa y la transformamos en la materia prima y también en el sustento de nuestros hogares. Trazar, hacer la trazabilidad y cuantificar la labor del reciclador de base, realmente no existe ningún país que va a poder pagar la labor que hemos hecho por 4 generaciones sin pago alguno. Por ende, creemos que existe esta ley que puede permitir reconocer, garantizar y dignificar el oficio de los recicladores de base. Pero para eso se nos requiere mucha participación de los actores importantes que tenemos en cada uno de nuestros países, nuestros municipios, Los municipios son claves para poder realmente articular los procesos, pero sobre todo reconocer a aquellos actores que trabajan en sus localidades, dándole prioridad laboral, porque la ley REP también es un elemento que puede abrir abanicos y oportunidades laborales importantes, no solamente en los residuos sólidos domiciliarios, sino también en otros residuos que son voluminosos como el electrónico y eléctrico, como son voluminosos también los textiles, y como hoy día se suma a esta cadena de residuos los orgánicos. Por eso es tan importante la ley. Pero para que sea también tan importante, es súper importante también la inversión, clarificar, y insisto en eso, porque si no hay una inversión directa hacia los recicladores de base, vamos a ver cómo los bonos de carbonos y los créditos de plástico terminan en los mismos actores que contaminan. Cuando una industria del plástico declara bono de carbono o declara créditos de plástico, está utilizando los números de los recicladores de base. Se habla que por lo menos el 50% de los residuos recolectados a nivel global lo hacemos nosotros, los recicladores de base. Por ende, esta ley no puede construirse en ningún país sin la mano de los recicladores de base, sin la mano y la voz de aquellos actores que han hecho posible realmente mitigar la contaminación en este momento. ¿Podemos cambiar el escenario? Sí, pero para eso se requiere compromiso, conciencia, reconocimiento y no normalizar, porque en muchos países se normaliza que los recicladores estén trabajando dentro de un vertedero en condiciones infrahumanas, en un modo de esclavitud solapada, donde las economías de nuestros países afectan directamente a nuestro bolsillo. Entonces, para nosotros la ley REP es un instrumento clave, pero debe ser realmente construida con los actores principales. Si no es así, vamos a tener escenarios complejos, como hoy día la crisis política que afecta a nuestros hermanos argentinos. Con orgullo puedo decir que en Brasil se están tomando las medidas exactas y poniendo el lugar que corresponde a los recicladores de base. Lula, el presidente de Brasil, lo está haciendo. Y hoy, gratamente, puedo ver cómo la presidenta mexicana está haciendo cambios de paradigma realmente importantes, poniendo en el primer lugar a los que deben ponerse en el primer lugar. No es la industria, no es la empresa, no es la transnacional, son aquellos actores de la sociedad civil anónimamente que han construido un modelo diferente de economía popular que permite dar y garantizar trabajo a 40 millones de recicladores en el mundo sin pago alguno, evitando crisis de cesantía que pueden ser hambruna para los países. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so very much, Soledad, and thank you to the interpreter, Alberto, who was able to keep up and allowed me to follow everything in English. Thank you so much. We have more questions. Actually, while Soledad was speaking, we received many questions in the Q&A. So I will try to answer these in a time, or have panelists answer these in the time that we have left. There's a question for you, Mariana. On Brazil, of course, specifically, is Brazil working on a strategy to bring the informal sector into the formal economy, and also how essential is this to EPR in your view, Mariana?
Well, thank you for the question, and I would like to say that we are working with to strengthen the inclusion of waste pickers. So we have, besides the national regulation, we have a decree that regulates the law, and we also put on the market another decree that was about credits for the reverse logistics as an incentive to the economy of scale and to the inclusion of waste pickers cooperatives. So we've, for example, prioritized that you only buy credits for an industry of recycling industry after all the credits that come from the cooperatives are done. So when you don't have any more credits from waste pickers, you can buy credits from the industrial recycling, the recycling industry. And in the decree that we're working right now of plastic for the EPR for plastic packaging, we're putting a goal for a target for recycled content, for example. And this is very important for waste pickers cooperatives because the industry will have to buy plastic and will have to pay a fair price for cooperatives, and then for when it's not enough, they can buy from the recycling industry. So yes, we have a interministerial. I always say it's an interministerial instance only for discussing the insertion of the waste pickers in the production and in the formal market to bring them to the formal market.
Yeah, to formalize the workers, basically.
They are formalized already. So you can, not all of them. When you have the individual waste picker, he cannot. Sometimes they are formal. Sometimes they're still working the informal part of the work. Many of them still are informal, but when you are cooperated, you have the cooperatives they're all formalized. They can be structured, and we make incentives for those companies who choose to help them, like buying the material, making education capabilities, and we have many incentives for those who want to help us to structure their work. And we have very good examples of very good professional cooperatives in Brazil already, and we wonder to make it like a formal sector, like a professional, a profession with dignity, with all the equipment and everything necessary to help us clean.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I'll move to Sergio now. We know that you worked a lot on the financing of collection and what it really takes to create healthy finances for collection systems. And there was a question in the chat as well on mandatory recycled content. It seems that EPR isn't really forcing companies to change the design of their products, which ultimately would also impact the economics if there is that market demand for recycled content. I guess first question is, what's your ultimate recommendation on the finances and creating healthy finances? And then second, do you believe EPR should also somehow enforce recycled content targets or obligations?
Yes, I try to be brief on both questions. Lessons that we learned through the processes is that the producers are definitely the obliged parties that should pay for, in this case, packaging waste. However, in experience in Argentina is that many of the municipal waste management systems are really costly. They have frequencies of up to 7 days a week. That is a very costly system. It represents, in some cases, up to 1/3 of the budget of a municipality, and that's paid by the taxpayer. Obviously, all that covers solid waste, organics, and packaging. The producers cannot finance the whole thing. So the focus of ideal of an EPR system will be to focus on packaging waste and looking at ways of making more efficient collection, and also working hand in hand, obviously, with governments and the cooperatives to enforce separation at source, education, and so on, and providing the right incentives. Other things we learn is investing in capital goods or equipment is necessary, but not enough. there's been a huge trend in Argentina in the last 10, 20 years of financed by international agencies investment in sorting plants. The result is that in a large geography, we've got many municipalities with brand new sorting plants that are working under capacity, or some of them not working. And that comes back what I mentioned before, is a complex matter that you need to look at the right incentives, logistics, and transportation, and so on. So these are clearly two key learnings. Even in some examples like Rafaela in Santa Fe province is a best practice example in Argentina over 20 years that implemented differentiated collection for solid waste, for organics, and for waste packaging, and so on. They have the highest recycling rate in the country, more than 30% of recycling materials. However, being more than 500 kilometers from Buenos Aires make prohibitive some of these materials to be actually recycled. So these things are necessary, collective collection system efficient, and so on, but needs to be a comprehensive systems like an EPR regulation is obviously more than needed, but also the systems, the human systems and the people moving this, and the governance that is needed to make it work. Regarding PCR content, so post-consumer recycled materials in if it's needed, any good, and that's what we learned through the Gap for EPR project. Obviously, it's very important to have it in any regulation, not just content, but also constant improvement of eco design, and also decisions on simplifying and making more simple the different type of materials. We got issues with plastic multi-layers and different type of that make it, the recycling industry is not ready, and it won't be. You need lots of investment in washing machines and so on. So it's quite complex. So in any good regulation, it has to be included and enforced.
Great. And just while you were speaking, actually, Sergio, another question for you came in on Argentina. But if you can, please, if you can type an answer in the Q&A so that we can use the last 6 minutes for other speakers, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yep.
Then I would like to bring Germán back in, if that is possible, as there were also 2 questions, actually. Towards the end, everyone's getting very, very active. 2 questions on Mexico. The first question, let me just check because Lucy kindly translated it into English for me. The first question is around when can we expect the approval and publication of the General Circular Economy Law in Mexico? And then I think there was a second question just in the chat now around tourism. Are there any plans with Mexico having such a big touristic sector to integrate that or to have EPR address tourism as well? Over to you, Germán.
Gracias, Valeria. En cuestión de los tiempos, en México existe un calendario legislativo muy puntual. Actualmente ya no está el Congreso en periodo de sesiones, pero esperemos que en la próxima periodo quede ya discutida y aprobada esta legislación. Será más o menos por septiembre, dependiendo la agenda legislativa. Entonces, esa sería un poco la agenda legislativa. Y en cuestión del sector turístico, se está trabajando también muy fuerte con la Unión Europea para el tema de sargazo, que implica obviamente toda la zona turística de Cancún, la Riviera Maya. Como ustedes saben, el sargazo se convierte en un problema para la gestión de los residuos, principalmente para las zonas turísticas. Entonces, se ha estado trabajando muy fuerte con el gobierno del estado de Quintana Roo para establecer también un centro de economía circular a partir justamente del sargazo, que tiene mucha valorización a nivel productivo por ser un producto 100% vegetal. Esas serían mis respuestas.
Okay, perfect. Very to the point and perfectly answered. Thank you, Germán. There are also 2 questions, and I think we will end with these questions to Soledad in the chat. One is around the role of waste management systems. how can we ensure they become allies of the grassroots recyclers instead of competitors? And there was also a second question around the remuneration or fair compensation for garbage collectors, including benefits, healthcare, breaks, and so on. What would be your proposal on fair remuneration for informal recyclers? Soledad.
Con respecto al rol de los grandes SIG, que son los grandes sistemas de gestión integrado, porque hay que entender que la ley REP se instala en nuestros países para obligar a las empresas productoras de envase y de embalaje a hacerse cargo de esto. Pero no vamos a ver a la gerencia de Coca-Cola o de alguna otra empresa haciendo esa recolección. Ellos arman un modelo que se llaman grandes sistemas de gestión integrados, los cuales tienen que administrar los fondos de estas grandes transnacionales para salir a recuperar estos plásticos o residuos para cumplir con las metas que la ley y el decreto los obligan. Bajo esa mirada, los grandes SIC tienen dos líneas de trabajo que son integradoras. Por un lado, directamente con el mundo privado, estos sistemas de gestión que han aparecido con mucha fuerza en nuestros países, y por otro lado, los informales, que son los recicladores de base. Pero para poder ser parte de este proceso, se requiere también algunas cosas sumamente importantes que la ley obliga a los recicladores de base a cumplir. Primero que nada, la certificación de cada competencias laborales de los recicladores de base, eso en el caso de Chile. En otros países latinoamericanos están aplicando el mismo formato. Certificar a los recicladores entregándole un diploma que identifica que ellos son profesionales de la gestión de residuos. Por otro lado, está también una línea más contractual o empresarial, como le podríamos decir, que en el fondo nos obliga a formalizar nuestra forma informal de trabajo. ¿Cómo se hace eso? A través de instrumentos como pequeños emprendimientos o cooperativas. Nosotros, como somos organizaciones asociativas y trabajamos en familia, hemos tomado la determinación de trabajar, de armar y articular cooperativas para poder avanzar en esta negociación con los grandes SIG. Porque lo que te pide el sistema es que tú puedas ser capaz de responder frente a lo que te exige legalmente el Estado en términos contratos laborales, imposiciones sociales, seguro de salud, etc. La única forma de lograr eso es con una figura formal que son las cooperativas. Por un lado,
I think we may have lost Soledad for...
integral, pero muy luchadora con los grandes SIG, con los cuánta participación los recicladores van a tener en la gestión de residuos en cada una de las comunas y municipios. Y por otro lado también cómo hacernos cargo de este negocio a través de esta figura formal con las cuales hoy día nos están obligando a ser parte, pero que también viene a reconocer y a dignificar lo que no hay otra figura. Porque no somos emprendedores, no tenemos la figura de emprendimiento, porque para hacer un emprendimiento se requiere de un gran financiamiento. Las cooperativas no tienen ese gran financiamiento, pero tienen algo que no tiene ninguna empresa, recurso humano a nivel nacional. Y eso permite ser parte de la gestión. Creo que ahí respondí las dos preguntas.
Thank you so much. And with that, it is actually exactly time to end this webinar or this event organized by the Global Action Partnership for EPR. I would very much like to thank my panelists, Germán, Mariana, Sergio, and Soledad. I would like to thank you, the audience, for being here. Please, of course, find ways to connect with one another if you would like to continue this conversation. As for us, the Gap for EPR, we remain available. As Angina said, we have a help desk, for example. You can turn to us if you need help with setting up EPR projects or exploring EPR. And we will also be publishing the recording of this session on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days, where you can also find recordings of other similar events that we held on EPR. So with that, for those of you at the WCF, I would like to wish you a great event. And for those of you not, have a lovely afternoon and evening, and we will be in touch. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Saludos. Hasta luego.
Thank you. Gracias.